Hey guys, it's Pete from Pete from Anxiety here. Welcome to today's episode. I appreciate y'all being here so much. Let's talk about a few things real quick. The Pete vs. Anxiety Team Anxiety Facebook group. Are you a part of it? You're not? What are you waiting for? The link's down here in the description down below, or go to Facebook and search Pete vs. Anxiety. Then look for the Team Anxiety Team page and join it today. Why not? You can join and help. It'll be great. Yeah, like right now. Hurry up. Stop what you're doing. Pause this video. Go do it right now. But anyways, let's also talk about the Pete vs. Anxiety YouTube page. If you're here right now, you're probably following it most likely. If not, head on over there, subscribe, be sure to like and comment on the videos and let me know, because all that stuff really helps, guys. I really appreciate it. And help me break the stigma that mental health is talked about enough. But anyways, guys, let's get into today's episode. I'll have a great one. Thank you so much again. And as I always say, don't ask how your day is, ask how your mental health is today. Guys, welcome to another exciting episode of Pete vs. Anxiety here on the Oracle Talk Radio Network. My guest today is a licensed clinical psychologist who has served as the FBI sleep expert for over 5 years with a passion optimizing human performance. She's on a mission to help others harness the transformation power of rest, because sleep shouldn't be top secret. Dr. Leah is my guest today. Dr. Leah, how you doing? She also has a book, by the way, guys, coming out October 1st called The Sleep Advantage. We will talk about that today as well. Dr. Leah, how you doing today?
Hey, Pete, thanks for having me. I'm doing well. How are you? And most importantly, how did you sleep last night?
Actually, last night I actually slept pretty well. You know, the reason she's asking
Good.
that question because I told her I don't know what sleep is.
I
So, Dr. Leah, let's
have to be
cover.
antagonistic about it.
Oh, yeah. No, I felt called out already. We'll talk about that too,
Sorry.
though. So, Dr. Leah, let's just touch barely on why the sleep expert for the FBI. That's kind of an interesting topic. You know, we're gonna touch on it a little bit, and then we're gonna jump into everything else.
Yeah. So during my residency, I spent, I was at the Memphis VA Medical Center. I spent some time in the sleep clinic. As you talk about, and just as you talked about on your intro there, that there's a very big stigma whenever it comes to mental health. And so when I got to the bureau, my supervisor had asked me, well, what's going to be your thing? And I said, well, why don't we go with sleep? Because everybody can relate to having a poor night's sleep, and there's not the stigma attached to it that there
Mhm.
is with mental health. And that's my opinion. And I think that a lot of people would agree with that as well. And so that's what I thought. And it just kind of exploded in the best way possible of being recognized as a sleep expert, getting referrals from all over the country and all over the world for people to work one-on-one with me, and then just doing lots and lots and lots of sleep education. So much so that I want to bring that to the regular public and civilians. And so that's what I'm trying to do with the book. And I'm slowly starting to grow a social media channel to give free sleep education away.
Yeah. Growing social media is so tough, man. Mine at first didn't take off until about this year, and then all of a sudden it just went. Like, I think I'm up I started 10 people on my YouTube channel, up to 187 now. I think my Instagram over the last month I've gained like 400 followers and stuff, and it just all of a sudden they just started popping in. I was just like, oh man. So let's talk about sleep.
Yeah, let's talk
People
about it.
ask me what sleep is, and I don't know what that is. You know, I work as overnights, and I know we were just discussing a little bit. I was listening to your
Yeah.
couple nukes where you were talking about that. I don't think people realize how important sleep is. I know a lot of us are like, "Oh, you look tired. You always look tired." I'm tired a lot, but
I bet you are.
it's hard. It's so Why is it so hard for people to get good sleep though? That's the question. They're like, it's just like a normal function. We all go to bed, but what is it, like some tips you have for people like, hey, listen, these are some things you shouldn't do to help you sleep better.
I think that we do a lot of things to get in our own way. That's what I'll say first and foremost, is that I think one piece of it is we don't really understand what happens when we sleep. I think it's very mysterious and misunderstood. And then if you do have an understanding of what happens when you sleep, then you can at least make a more informed decision about what you're going to do to make better decisions about getting better sleep. So if you want, we can go down that rabbit hole, because I think that it is important to make sure
Yeah,
that
definitely.
people have like a general understanding of what happens whenever we sleep. So I think that there's this common misconception about when you turn off the light switch to go to bed, that you're also turning off a light switch for your brain and for your body, and that you kind of just go dormant. You go into airplane mode for 7, 8 hours. And that couldn't be further from the truth, really. What's happening at night when you're sleeping, it is probably more productive than you are in your everyday life. And yet you have no idea that this is going on in your brain and body. And so, just to kind of touch upon these things, we go through light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep, and we cycle through these various different times throughout the night. So, one sleep cycle is anywhere from 50 to 90 minutes. And then a normal average healthy sleeper, as I like to say, would normally go through about 5-ish cycles per night. And so you're hitting light, deep, and REM several times throughout the night, but it's not all equal. We get a lot of deep sleep in the early part of the night whenever you lay down to go to bed, and we get a lot more REM sleep in the other part of the night whenever it's closer to your alarm clock waking up, or alarm clock waking you up, excuse me. So what's important about these? Okay, so there's lots of different functions that are happening when you're sleeping, and these typically fall into a particular stage of sleep. However, there is some overlap, but let's just talk very generally. So whenever it comes to deep sleep is so important for physical restoration. And as you can imagine, with first responders, with military, with veterans, I talk a lot about human performance. I actually just got back from the Human Performance and Biosystems Summit over the week, and I got a chance to talk there, and it was very, very high level military folks and just how can we make our war fighters more effective. And so I think that no matter who you are, no matter what's going on in your life, whether you're on one end of the continuum or another, peak performance is important for everybody, whatever that looks like in your life. Maybe that just looks like being the best parent that you can be. Maybe that looks like being as best of an athlete as you can be. Maybe that means bringing really high quality ideas to the team that you're working with. So I think human performance can look like a lot of different things. And so whenever I think about deep sleep, that's what I really think is the key whenever it comes to human performance. And when we are in deep sleep, we are giving our body this chance to really rest and take things down a couple notches. So what should be happening should be that your heart rate should slow down, your blood pressure should slow down, your respiratory rate should slow down, the muscles are relaxing, and this is a period of very deep restoration, like from a cellular level up. Because remember, we ask our bodies to work very hard all day, every day. Even if you're just going through your normal day, there's still micro damage and wear and tear that's happening. And when we go into deep sleep, that is the only time that our body can really do the deep work of restoring itself. And also we have growth hormone that's being released at that period of time too, that's also going to work to help with this restorative nature of deep sleep. Going hand in hand with that, we also have just like one of the coolest things I learned when I was at the sleep clinic is that all of your organs should have the opportunity to take a rest break. And during the daytime, there's just simply not time for that because we're busy thinking, or we're busy eating and digesting, like, or we're busy moving. Like there's so many things going on. But during this deep stage of physical restoration, each of your organs should have an opportunity to take a rest break. And like I mentioned, and we'll talk more about this, is a lot of times we get in our own way, whether that means like eating a meal and then trying to go right to bed. Okay, well, you can do that, but digestion is very energy intensive. So if we are deciding, okay, I'm going to eat a big meal and then I'm going to go right to bed, well, you're not going to get that deep restorative sleep, or I should say as restorative as you possibly could, because your body's busy digesting and it's trying to break down that food and take that nutrients and do with it what it will. So instead of the pancreas and the small intestine and the gallbladder all getting that promised rest break, it's like, sorry guys, ain't happening tonight. Maybe tomorrow.
So
So
do you recommend, like, how long do you recommend people, like, after they eat, wait to go to sleep? Like, what's the kind
I
of ideal
suggest 2 to
range?
3 hours is what
Okay.
I suggest, because that gives you enough time to eat, digest, and then that's the opportunity where when you go to sleep, then it's kind of the optimal conditions for you to be able to, that digestion to be over, and that you
Yeah.
can take advantage of that rest break that we promise the body. Um, Also in deep sleep too, we are restoring our energy reserve. So I imagine that everybody listening probably plugs in their phone whenever they go to bed so that when they wake up, they have 100% battery. And that's the way that I like to think of the bed and deep sleep is I am basically getting into my charger when I get into bed so that when I wake up in the morning, hopefully I have 100% battery so I can give in whatever circumstance I'm being asked to the next day, and that I'm not running on low. So I think that that's what's really important about deep. So let me just pause there for a moment and see if you have any questions about deep, and then we'll move on to REM, which is
No,
insanely
I think you're
cool.
covering it though. I mean, it makes
Yeah,
sense, and I don't know, like, I think that's the hardest part for a lot of people is to get that deep sleep, because once you get that sleep, then it's hard to stay deep sleep, and then, as you said, they cycle through all the different things, where we're going to start learning more about too. But no, it all makes sense to me.
good.
I get some sleep. I actually last night I slept amazing. I think I slept the most I ever slept in a long period of time. I think it's also because I work overnight, so it kind of messes with my sleep.
It definitely
So my
does.
days when I'm off on my Sundays, I usually try and stay up all day so I'll fall asleep at night. So then Sunday, Monday, I can sleep at a normal time. And then Tuesday, I'll take a nap before I go to work. And then I get up and go to work. And, I'll be back on that cycle again. And then, like I said, Sunday, I'll try and reset again. And I don't know if that's a great idea. Well, you're here now. So you could tell me if that's a great idea or not.
The overnight shift is one of the most challenging things that people do. And we have to do it for lots of different reasons, right? At least in my field, law enforcement, first responders, like crime doesn't stop when the sun goes down. Or if we think about people who work in an emergency room, like obviously there's going to be people who need care around the clock. And so whatever people are doing that they have this night shift, that's going to be really important work. But just to kind of talk about the science behind that, our brains, even though we have come so far with regard to our caveman ancestors, our brains are still wired in the same way, even though we have so many technological advances. And so it's pretty incredible that with, if we think about our caveman ancestors, how do they know when it was time to be awake? The sun
Right.
came up. And how did they know when it was time to go to bed? The sun went down. And so that's a very big piece of what we are wired to do. So whenever we have people who are working on shifts where their schedules are flip-flopped, then that's where we start to get into some issues. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but whenever it comes to working these overnights and consistently doing that, the research shows us that that is a known carcinogen. So I'm not saying that working nights means that it causes cancer. What I'm saying is that we know that this is a modifiable risk factor
Yeah.
for cancer. And then the longer that you work this type of shift work or overnight shifts, the higher it increases the chances of various different cancers, like year by year by year. So it's really important that we put that out there. And again, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I do think that it's really important that people, again, have this knowledge and then do with
Yeah.
it what you will. If you have the ability to move to other shifts or to take another position, it's going to be, in your best interest to protect your health as much as you possibly can, because you get one brain, you get one body, and you better take good care of it.
Yeah. True. Yeah. No, I can speak on that one. I didn't take great care of myself, and now I'm type 2 diabetes I deal with and everything else. And it's like I tell people all the time, I'm like, listen, y'all better take care of yourselves now, man. Don't end up like I did. Like it's not the horrible, but it could get worse. I manage my diabetes really well now. I check my sugar levels and keep an idea of what I'm doing, all these other things. And sleep, I think, is the only thing that's hard for me though for during the day. But I did listen to your interview with a couple of nukes, Mr. Whiskey, and you were talking about it. You were saying blackout curtains, and those are fantastic, actually, because
Yes.
I have those all over my house for that reason. Because,
Good.
and my mom likes to say I live like a mole man, but I'm like, I work nights, so it's kind of,
Yeah.
it helps block out the light so it doesn't keep me awake.
Yeah, that's one of my best tips. And if we want to talk about people who are working overnights, that's a huge piece of it, right? Is making sure that when you do get a chance to go to bed, yeah, the sun is going to be out. So we have to do whatever it is that we can to make the conditions as if it were nighttime.
Yeah,
So the blackout curtains, and then making sure that there's no light coming through, because even if it's just a little bit of light coming in, it definitely does make an impact. So having like Velcro or something along the curtains, so we're making sure that the light is completely blocked out. Also, again, it sounds like you've done a very nice job with your home as far as making sure that all of your windows have this black light, or black curtains, excuse me. But there are a lot of people who that's not a priority for them, because it's just one member of the household who is working nights. And so oftentimes, like, a lot of light comes in underneath the doorway. So we could do some type of weather stripping, which will also be blocking the light, but also blocking sound as well. So I think that that's really important. Um, Also, there's a lot of regular sleep knowledge that we could also still apply to people who work overnight. So the room should be dark, cool, and quiet. We talked about dark already. Cool, it should be like low 60s is what the research tells us in order for us to get the best night possible. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of different people who have different preferences. Like I have friends who, even in the summertime, want to sleep with a heated blanket on. It is what it is. So go with what your preference is. But the research tells us that it should be the
No,
low 60s.
not the summer
Yes.
blanket.
Yes.
I live in Texas, so man, the blackout curtains also help with the heat.
Yes.
And where am I
Absolutely.
at now too? There's a big tree to the other side because the way my space is set up, it's weird. It's like long wise versus wide, like a normal place would be. So like mine has a tree that covers a lot of the sunlight coming in, so the curtains help, and then they help with the heat too because it gets
Yeah.
ridiculously hot here. And my wife, of course,
Absolutely.
she likes to keep the house at like sub-zero temperature, so I'm
Ah,
cold all the time. So and because I've been taking Ozempic, so I've been losing a lot of weight though. And I'm noticing that I don't run as warm as I used to because I started at 340 when I start this whole journey. And now I'm down to the 300s now.
okay.
After all that weight is gone now, I'm not as warm as I used to be. So like I get cold really easily. And she's like, "You're
Mm.
cold?" I'm like, "Dude, I'm freezing. Like I wake up shivering sometimes because it's so cold because the way the house is set up in the room set up, the vent is right there blowing right on you. So sometimes I just kind of pass out in weird places, and she's just like, all of a sudden it's like I get up, I'm shivering, and I'm like, I'm freezing. It's just, you don't have to make all the sounds. I'm like chattering my teeth and everything else. I'm like, I'm trying to warm up. So I mean, but the other thing though, someone told me, my therapist was telling me, she said that if you put something on like you've seen 1,000 times and you turn it on really low, that noise, you're less likely to focus on that at all too, because you've already seen it, so you don't have to stay up and watch it. So is that a good advice too, or
Okay. So let's talk about a continuum of things. So again, my population is law enforcement, first responders, like military. So a lot of times complete silence is not something that a lot of people can
yeah,
stand or tolerate. And also if you are sleeping in the daytime when everyone's awake, there's probably somebody out mowing their lawn or traffic or things that make it much louder than usual
yeah,
compared to someone who's sleeping at night. So I would say first and foremost, if you can, like earplugs are great. If it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. My favorites, not sponsored, Loop Quiet 2. I think they're fabulous and they're relatively affordable compared to the ones that you like squish up from, the drugstore and then they fall out of your ears
yeah,
immediately.
those microfoam ones, yeah,
Yes, those are garbage. I've gone through so many of those, it's not even funny. But then I would recommend if you need some type of sound, and oftentimes people do, especially if you're doing shift work, like white noise, if not like some type of colored noise.
yeah.
Um, I would say nature sounds are also a great
Yes, nature
option.
sounds really well. You're right. Yep, those do work really
Yes,
good.
that's
I
perfectly
turn on
fine.
podcasts sometimes too, and I pass out to those too, just hearing them and things like that. So I think it's just the people talking because I'm so used to people talking in general, and it's just a lot of noise going on around me, and I just kind of focus on that, and then that's usually what I zonk out to. I'm just like, that's the last thing I remember listening to, as I pass out, and it helps too for me. Now that may not work for everybody, but I'm a podcaster already, so I'm already doing a bunch of I'm listening to a bunch of podcasts and things like that too,
Yeah.
and all that other kind of stuff. So it's kind of in my nature of just things I listen to. But I usually do Seinfeld's the one I usually turn on a lot of times too because I've seen
Eh,
it 1,000 times. I'll turn on real low, and that way it cancels any noises. I do have a train in the background that
I
comes
can
in
hear
every so
it.
often. Yeah, that comes in a lot because it's like a couple streets over. Now, where I used to live right across the street from it. So my wife at the time when we were dating, she called me at 3 in the morning. I hate this train. Click, because literally it's right across the way. Like you're across the street from this train. And I was like, yeah, no, you get used to it after a while. It's just there, because then they start hitting the foghorns. One guy like laying on it all night. I'm like, yeah, can you just stop, please? But like now, I don't think noise really bothers me, honestly. I don't think it really doesn't affect me too much because I don't really hear much because it's muffled by the windows. And then with the curtain up, I think it kind of muffles the sound a little bit too, and
Yeah, I think
and
so
things like
too.
that too. So it doesn't really affect me as much. I think for me, it's hard to put myself asleep because I'm always busy working on something. And I have to just shut my brain down because I'm just like, I have anxiety really bad. So my anxiety kicks
You
in a
don't
lot of times.
say.
I start freaking out and start going, everywhere. And it's sometimes that's my worst enemy too, is because I battle it all the time, and just got to kind of like focus my brain on something. So that's why I use, like I said, use the Seinfeld or the podcast and stuff. And I listen to these podcasts and I'll just something randomly on, take something random on, and I'll just listen to it. And I'll just it kind of soothes me and I fall asleep to that, and I mean, I get some sleep. I don't get enough. I can tell you that much, but I do take the days off that I have, like Saturday, Sunday, Mondays are usually my days where I'm not really doing as much. Like I'll record this show. I'll record my next episode at 3, and after that, I shut off everything. I disconnect from everything, like in social media, everything else like that. I don't only put some posts out. I schedule posts to go out. So the weekends usually are my days to just basically just unwind from everything. Like I do work Saturday nights, but I'll come home, get some stuff done, take a nap, and get up and do some other things, stuff like that. But then Sundays, my routine is I usually try and stay up as long as I can. That way, when I go to bed at night, I can go to bed at a normal time because I'm usually up all the time. So we have a spare bedroom, luckily. So sometimes I'll sleep in the spare bedroom because I usually keep her up some nights and things like that too. So, and it gets interesting most nights because some nights I stay up late, but I've been trying not to, honestly. Like I don't try and take a nap when I get home and I'm a little tired, but it's worth it to me because then I could sleep through the night. I don't have to worry about being up all night and then sleeping like at 3:00 in the morning till I got to get up to record the show or whatever, things like that. So I could have some kind of normality going on. And like I said, Tuesdays where my brain resets back to, okay, well, I got to go back tonight. I got to go into work, get off, come home. And it gets the hardest part though, for me is always the third night shift worker is that you get home and it's like, you want to get all these things done, but you got to sleep. And you're not prioritizing your sleep is your thing. And a lot of people ask me that, they're like, Pete, do you ever sleep? I'm like, what's that? I don't know what that is. And people laugh when I tell them that. I'm like, but I don't. A lot of times I do it. It's hard because my brain's so focused on 20 different things. So I had to actually narrow my podcasting schedule down to, just one a day because I was doing like 2 or 3 a day, working all night, coming home, recording them, and then going to bed. So I limited it to one a day during the days that I'm working. That way it's easier. I can come home, do what I got to do. And that's it. I go to bed and I don't go back till like 9:30 at night. So I try and sleep as much sleep as I can in between there. And then I get up and go back to work and come home, and it kind of changed my schedule a slight bit, how I sleep. But, I still don't think I get enough, honestly, and people always tell me, oh, you look tired. Yeah, I'm tired. I'm like,
most people are.
Jobs.
Yeah, most people are exhausted and they don't know what it's like and they can't remember the last time that they had a good night's rest.
Yeah.
But one of the things that you mentioned, and I just kind of want to clarify something for people who are listening. So you mentioned podcasts and you also mentioned sometimes sleeping with Seinfeld on. So I want to address those things. And again, do with it what you will. Like I give these sleep lectures all the time. And oftentimes there's someone who normally they're with their partner in the audience and they get very angry because they say, oh, well, my partner breaks every single rule that you've said here today during your lecture and they sleep like a baby. There will be people like that. There will be freaks out there.
No, I get that completely.
But I want to talk about why I don't recommend doing those two activities. And then the audience can decide what it is that they want to do with their time. So whenever it comes to the brain is wired to interpret language. So it wants to listen. That's its job. That's what it's wired to do. It wants to listen. It wants to interpret language. It wants to take information and determine, is this something that's important? Do I need to be acting upon this? What do I need to do with this information? So even if it's something that you've seen 100 times before, I hear that a lot too, is first and foremost, if it's a podcast, again, your brain is listening. It's engaged, whether you think that it is or not, even if you think it's the most boring thing, your brain is listening and it's engaged. And when it's doing that, then it can't also be doing all these very restorative and important functions that it needs to do at night. So I would say that unless you have a sleep timer on, and I would be more okay with that. If you had a sleep timer on for 10 or 15 minutes, that would be okay. Especially I have a lot of people who tell me I can't fall asleep without noise or I can't fall asleep without the television. If you really can't and you don't
use a sleep timer,
then use a sleep timer, I would say, because there are people who do, and we'll talk here about TV, falling asleep with the television on and leaving it on all night. That's going to be problematic. Again, it's the same deal with your brain wanting to interpret language, but also now we have lights from the TV. We have movement. Unless you're wearing an eye mask, and this is gross, your eyelids are very, very thin. And so that means that any light coming in from the television, so like colors, movement, like all that dynamic stuff is coming in through the eyelids. And not that it necessarily will wake you up, but we have something called micro awakenings. And micro awakenings are exactly what they sound like. They're teeny tiny little awakenings. And you may not even be aware that they're happening, but they are happening and they're impacting your quality of sleep. And so if we have someone who's sleeping with the television on and we've got, the noise and the language going on, we've got the lights and the movement going on, that's all going to be very disruptive to the brain and its ability to really I don't want to say shut down, but shut down and do what it is that it needs to do instead of playing around listening to Seinfeld episode for the 75th time.
Okay, well, I feel a little called. I'm joking. No, I get that. I'm gonna
It's
try that though. I'm
important.
gonna try the sleep timer and see if it helps.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't even think of that honestly. I just like I'm gonna try and see if it works better for me. I was doing that though. I did an experiment at one point when I was living close to that train station. I had a whole separate room where all my collectible stuff was. I put my mattress in there one time and just blacked out the room completely. And I noticed that my sleep was better than
Yes.
having the TV constantly on. Which I don't know why I went away from that. I think it's because usually when I'm doing it, I'm usually watching something and I pass out while watching it because my brain's just going 1,000 miles an hour already. So, I'm gonna have to do it though. I have to put the sleep timer on, see if it works for me, if
Yeah.
it works better. I did use nature sounds for a while. I do agree that
Good.
really works really well.
Yes.
And things like that too. So, I mean, it's all what it is. Like you know what you're talking about. People getting triggered. I don't understand why you're getting upset when someone's just telling you facts. I'm like, I think that's the biggest thing though when it comes to people is they don't like to be wrong. Like they don't like to hear, oh, I'm wrong. I don't know anything. But Dr. Leah has all this research she's done. She's just laying the facts out for you. She's not saying, hey, listen, you're wrong. Hey, this is just the facts for you in front of you. You can take them for what they're worth. Don't get mad at me because you don't like what I'm saying. It's just like it blows my mind because it's like people don't realize like sleep is important, especially with mental health too. Because when
Yes.
a lot of those things you're dealing with and stuff like that, it's like if you're not sleeping, you start hallucinating and start seeing things. I went through a
Well,
phase of insomnia at one point, and let me tell you, that wasn't fun. Like we were counting the number of hours I had slept in like 7 days. I think about an hour a day on average is what we averaged it out to, and I was like
ooh,
10 days on it, and it was horrible. And I started hallucinating at one point, started seeing
yes.
things, started hearing things that weren't there, and I was like, oh yeah, this is a problem for me. And I don't remember what it was. It was just, I just went through this phase of it for 10 days. And then after that, I finally could sleep, but it's just like, it was the worst experience ever. And everybody was laughing at me, but I'm like, you don't understand what's going on up here, man. Already I've got anxiety. Then I got that going on, I got depression. So all these things are all playing a game of, pinball in my head at this point. The lack of
Right.
sleeping isn't helping. So
Lack of sleep doesn't help anyone or anything. And also remember, we use sleep deprivation as a torture technique.
yeah, we do.
And we do that for a reason, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
the wheels fall off when we're not getting enough sleep. And it sounds like you firsthand have experienced that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it wasn't fun at all. I could tell you right now, that's something I'd wish for anybody to deal with, and then on top of everything else I deal with on top of that, it was just like, yeah, it was not good for me at all, and I did notice like it was so hard though, because when you try to go to sleep and then you sleep for like an hour and then you get up and you don't feel as restorative because then I had sleep apnea because my weight was so high.
Yes.
So I had
Yes.
that playing against me too. So I stopped breathing in my sleep and things like
Yep.
that. So I had all these things counteracting everything I was trying to do. And now that I'm losing weight and I'm getting myself into better shape, I noticed my sleep quality is a little better. I am not as good at making sure I stick to it. It's something I do need to work on. So I call myself out on that one. But I mean,
Can
the
I ask
facts are there.
you if you're wearing a CPAP or some other
No,
type of treatment?
no, I'm not actually. I
Should you
probably
be?
should be. I should be, honestly. And it's something I need to address and things like that, And I do think I have to go do another sleep study, honestly, because I did one before and I just didn't like the little nose units and things. I didn't like those. You know what I mean? It was the mask. I couldn't sleep with a mask.
Yeah, and that's something that I definitely got a chance to learn firsthand when I was at the Memphis VA Medical Center of, again, our military folks. And I will say that CPAP has come a very long way, but
Yeah.
historically it's always been like a mouth and nose apparatus. And there's a lot of folks out there that have had some type of trauma, especially whenever it comes to military folks, like having something on their face. And so that can be very upsetting and anxiety provoking for people to try and sleep with that on their face, let alone the air pressure. So I will say that there's a lot of new and different apparatuses coming out where it's just the nose, just the mouth, the nose and
Yeah.
the mouth. There's lots of different things coming out. And that's important because not one size fits all. And I'm glad that we're moving towards a place where we do have different options. But nonetheless, and again, I don't mean to necessarily call you out, but whenever it comes to untreated obstructive sleep apnea, it is incredibly dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Incredibly dangerous because, a lot of times people say, oh, well, I've been in bed all night, but I don't understand why I'm so exhausted, why I'm so tired,
That's,
why I constantly have no energy. And when people say things like that to me, that's an automatic red flag of, I think that we need to go have a sleep study done. Because when you tell me that you've been in bed for hours and yet you're still feeling unrefreshed and exhausted, that tells me something else is going on. And there are a lot of people who have obstructive sleep apnea who don't know that they do. I just spoke to someone recently who, wearables are kind of like all the rage right now, whether that's like a ring or a wristwatch or whatever. And I was just speaking to someone and he was like, you're never going to believe this, because he figured out that my specialty was sleep, and he was wearing a wearable, and then it sent all of his data to his doctor every week. And his doctor called him and said, hey, we need to have a conversation. I don't think that you realize this, but you are like, your sleep quality, I think that you need to go have a sleep study done. And that's actually how he was diagnosed with obstructive sleep apnea. Like, he didn't even know that it was happening. Oftentimes, whenever we figure out that someone has obstructive sleep apnea, it's because of a partner, like who's sharing the bed, a roommate, someone who sees the struggle that you're having at night and the gasping or the snoring, rather than the actual person experiencing it themselves. They just know that they're tired and they don't understand why they don't have any energy. But it's normally someone else who needs to tell you, hey, I watched you sleep last night and I'm kind of concerned. So for anybody out there listening who thinks that they may have obstructive sleep apnea, please go have a sleep study. This could potentially save your life, because whenever it comes to untreated obstructive sleep apnea, it's related to hypertension that can't be controlled with regular blood pressure medications, cardiovascular issues, stroke, sudden death. Like, it's honestly no joke. And I know that the CPAP can feel like such an annoying piece of equipment that you have to wear, but there are other options. But I just really want to put that out there for your audience, because it is so important. And when it's untreated, the problems are exponential that it causes.
No. I knew it's always been a problem. I think it's something I put off, but I've been getting my health in better place, and it's definitely something I need to have a conversation about, because I do have a wellness visit coming up. So it's definitely be something we address, because maybe that does explain a lot of things. You had a lot of information of things I deal with. Like I sleep, but I don't feel like I'm rested at all, sometimes. And it's just like, I just feel like I'm dragging. So I'm using caffeine to keep me going. And that's not really a good idea with anxiety, because then the caffeine feeds the anxiety even worse, makes it worse than it is, and then the cycle just begins. And
sometimes too, like, it's a matter of, if your CPAP feels off, like, speak to your doctor, because there are settings that can be changed. There are various different options. So if it doesn't feel right, schedule an appointment. But one thing I want to mention is, you talked about being on this weight loss journey. Well, when we're not sleeping well, then, and this is, the research tells us, and we're going to break it down like very, very in a basic way. We have two hormones that have a lot of control over how hungry we are. And so we've got ghrelin, which is like, feed me, I'm hungry. And we've got leptin, which is responsible for satiety. And I've had enough to eat. Thank you very much. I don't want any more. And so when we're not sleeping well, ghrelin goes up, meaning feed me, I want more, I'm hungry. And leptin, that says, no, thank you, I've had enough, I'm not hungry anymore, goes down. So this imbalance is a very big problem. Also, the research tells us that when people sleep less than 6 hours a night, that the following day, they're more likely to eat anywhere from 200 to 500 calories more compared to someone who slept 7 hours plus. So that's a big problem. If we're doing this night after night after night, that what might seem small of 200 to 500 calories per day can definitely add up. Also, the types of food that we're reaching for are going to be more fatty, more sugary, more starchy, things that are going to give us that energy that we need, because we're not getting it from sleep. And then also too, I imagine that everybody can relate to this. If you've had a poor night rest and you're already like meh about the gym, you're probably going to be even more meh about the gym. Like, if you're tired, you don't want to get up and move your body. And so all these things really play into weight management. And that's a huge thing that people don't realize, is if you have exercise and weight loss goals, that sleeping better can absolutely help you with that. And then, as we talk about obstructive sleep apnea, when you're sleeping better, hopefully, we can regulate all those weight management things that we just talked about, so that you can sleep better. So if we're managing weight too, that also plays into obstructive sleep apnea. And one of the many lifestyle factors that people recommend is losing weight to help improve and release some of the pressure that's on the throat, the neck, the airway, all that.
Yeah, it all makes sense.
All
so
connected.
You think about it. Yeah, it all makes sense. So
yeah,
I mean, it all makes sense. Like I said, it doesn't feel like being called out. I know we joke about it, but it's just like, it is what it is. It's just full front to, the facts are there. It's just something that needs to be addressed. And I think that's the hardest part for a lot of people, is that they just don't want to know if something's wrong. I know somebody in particular that says that all the time. They're like, well, I don't want to know if something's wrong. I'm like, you don't want to know if something's wrong that you can address now to improve your quality of life. It's like, it
You
doesn't
get
make any
one
sense.
brain, you get one body. Take
Exactly.
good care of it. I know that these things might seem scary, but if you address them now versus 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it won't be nearly as scary. And I think that that's a big piece of it, is this fear and this anxiety. And so if you can address it now,
Yeah.
it's a much smaller form of anxiety, even though
Right.
it still exists. I totally get it.
Yeah, and it also helps you think clearer too, because then your brain is so foggy and everything else. And then, yeah, I know. I need to get some
And
better.
I'm not trying to call you out in particular. Like,
No, you're good.
this is what it is that I do. Like, when people come to my sleep lectures, I like to do a Q&A. I like it to be very interactive and to talk
Yeah.
to people. And so oftentimes that's what it comes down to, is just like, my catchphrase I would say is, you don't know what you don't know. And I think that's a
Exactly.
huge piece about sleep is, yeah, sleeping with your favorite television show on. You don't know what you don't know. Well, now you do. So what are you going to do with that information?
Exactly.
And
They're
it's
gonna get
just,
mad. Listen, you're at another. They're gonna get mad. They're like, "Oh God, you're calling me out."
do with it what you will. And sometimes that's what's
That
important
should be on
whenever
a
it comes to
T-shirt, by the way.
health.
Do with what you will should be on a T-shirt for you. That way you can
Yeah,
just pick it up and go, "Do
you
with
don't know
what you
what you don't
will."
know. Yeah, do with it what you will.
I love it. There you go. Then the other one too. You can use that one as the other one too. Just says pick up the shirt. Be like, here you go. Just like I says, do
One's on the
what you
front,
will.
one's on the back.
There you go. There goes some great merchandise ideas for you. So let's switch topics though. We're gonna talk about your book now. Okay. So
Oh,
the Sleep
cool.
Advantage.
Yeah.
I know it's coming out October 1st. So let's hype
Yes.
this thing up. Tell us about what the book is about exactly.
Oh goodness, I am so excited. So just to give you like a little bit of information
Oh,
in a
it's got to be
nutshell.
exciting. I guarantee it's got to be exciting, because I thought about writing a book about a memoir about myself, because people always ask me questions about myself. So I'm like, you know what? Forget it. I'm just going to do it in a book. Why not? Just so I can say I published a book, because it means
Yeah.
there's something cool to add to my list of accomplishments. But anyways, so what is the Sleep Advantage about exactly? So what started the idea for the book, and then what is it about?
So I never thought I was going to write a book. And then I went to a conference for first responder wellness a couple months ago, back in October. And I went and I got a chance to talk all about sleep, and I got a chance to talk all about trauma, which is my other specialty. And the room was packed. Like, we didn't even have enough seats. We had to bring more seats in. And I'm like, wow, like, this is so cool that people are actually choosing to come to a lecture about sleep. Like, this is awesome. And afterwards, someone comes up to me and was like, this was fantastic. Thank you so much. But the person who really needs it is my best friend, and she's not here. And, do you have a website? Do you have a handout? Do you have a book? And I was like, oh,
Oh, there
like,
it
she took me
is.
by surprise. I'm like, you would read a book if I wrote it? And she was like, yeah, of course. And so I go home after this conference and I'm like, all right, let's do this thing. And I just sit down. And again, like, I take all this knowledge of like 6+ years of being this sleep expert and all the people that I've worked with and all the conversations that I had. And this book ended up being hella long. It's with my editor right now, and he's telling me, Leah, it's too long. Like, we have to cut some stuff. But what I think is out there, first and foremost, again, everybody sleeps, but I don't think that we do a great job of teaching people how to sleep, things that we're doing to get in our own way. And the few sleep books that are out there are either like very academic, very sciencey, like,
Yeah.
again, over my head, and I even have a doctorate. And then I think that there are others that are kind of like more pop culture-y and like kind of touching upon a bunch of different things. And so what I really wanted my book to be was somewhere in the middle, where I'm giving you science, but it is much more down to earth. It's much more easily digestible. And then it's going to be why the stages of sleep are important, how much sleep you need each night. Again, I talk about how are we getting in our own way, and then what are the things that we can do to improve our sleep. So there's a lot of information about sleeping with the TV on, caffeine, alcohol, naps, like, you name it. But then, and what I think is cool is I call this part like the troubleshooting manual. And if you are having a hard time falling asleep, if you're having a hard time staying asleep, if you struggle with nightmares, restless leg, night terrors, whatever, this is the part of the book where you can go and you can flip exactly to that part and you can read, I'm struggling with this. I think that this is what I might have. What do I need to do? And it gives you actionable strategies to be able to do that night. And the same thing, I have 3 chapters on obstructive sleep apnea, because again, I think it's so important that people understand
Yeah.
what's happening. And I also do like a lot of like myth busting or like putting your anxieties at ease. I talk about like, what is it like to go have a sleep study done? Like,
Oh, I can tell you what that's like too. But yeah,
yeah,
no, I
like
agree. Because you
why
hear that
you
word and
might
then you're
feel
like, oh, what
anxious.
is that?
Yeah, yeah. And so I want to put your anxiety at ease. And then at the very end, I have a chapter for like leaders and organizations on how you can do better. So that's really what it's all about. And so October 1st, 2025, it's coming out. And I'm just so excited to be able to share this because the more that I talk, I'm just finding that there are more and more and more people who can absolutely improve their sleep. And I hope to be the catalyst for that.
Right. Well, that'd be awesome, though. I mean, sounds like it's gonna be a good book. I'll have to check it out for sure. I didn't read a lot of books before, but ever since starting this show, I've read a lot of interesting books along the way,
Yeah.
and it's been really great, though. But I like how you can break it down to someone
Yes.
understands. It's not so much science, jogging for people to be like, wait, what the hell is that? Let me go get to decode this thing. You broke it down for them so it makes sense. So I think it's
Right.
easier for people to approach you though, because you make it so easy to have a conversation with you. Because some people, I feel like, when they get a little too technical, it's just like, you don't want to really have a conversation with them. You're like, yeah, I'd rather not ask a question, and it's great that,
Yes.
you have that ability and the personality to break it down for people to understand these things, because I think that's a lot of times when people don't know things, it's like when you start using too big of words and they're like, okay, well, I'm turned off on this idea. I don't want to, I'm done
Yes.
reading this book now. It's all over.
Absolutely. And I pride myself on being able to take knowledge and information and bring it to a level that is more easily digestible. And like you said, I'm not scaring people away who might have
Yeah.
questions or who want to know more. And that's what I'm attempting to do with social media too. But I just think that it's so important that people have knowledge at a level that makes sense to them and then they can do something actionable about it. That's what's really important to me.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Social media is kind of a weird thing though, and sometimes it's hard to take off. Like I said, for me at first, it was like very slow growth, and then all of a sudden it just shot off for some reason. And as I
Yeah.
connect with more people, it's more people commenting in it and sharing the stuff, and everybody sharing everybody's things like that too. And things like that. It's a lot of factors that go into it, but I liked
Sure.
what I was hearing so far. I've been checking out your stuff. I do for all
Thank
my guests.
you.
Honestly, for all my guests, I really go check out a lot of their stuff to see what they're doing, see how a conversation goes on. And like we were discussing
Yeah.
before, I try to stay away from all the questions you've already gotten before about
Yes.
things, because it's like you can come say the same damn thing every time, but it's like that's not what this show's about. We've got to be different than everybody else. So we have a casual conversation when it comes in. And I love that you're working with first responders, because I feel like first
Yes.
responders mental health, no one really talks about. Let's be straight honest about it. Like, you don't hear enough people talking about it. And I interviewed a guy, he's doing a podcast called The Bro Code Unscripted, and that's exactly what he does. He's a fireman of
Oh,
18
cool.
years, and I think he's still scheduled to have it come out sometime this month. I don't remember. I was waiting to see. I haven't heard back from him. I got to check in with him and see, because he had come on and he was talking to me. Wasn't sure what the timeline for it was, but I think it's interesting, honestly, because I think that not a people think about what these guys see
Yeah.
firsthand. Like, these
Mhm.
people in the ambulances, these cops that roll up on these scenes, these firemen that are
Yep.
involved in these things. Like, these poor guys, like, they see some pretty crazy stuff, but nobody at the end of the day asks them, hey, how are you doing?
Mhm.
And
And that's been a huge part of what my career has been because my specialties are sleep and trauma, and so I've been trained as a trauma psychologist before I even had my own license. I was, as a baby psychologist in training, I was doing the trauma work, and it really is so incredible, and it's important that they have folks who are not just very skilled clinicians, but people who are culturally competent in what it is that they do and what it is that they experience and what it is that they see every day. And unfortunately, I feel like we just don't have enough of people like myself who are culturally competent and well versed in this world to understand and be able to hold that trauma and work with them and create a safe space where they can process through.
yeah, like I said, I'm thinking of people ask them how they're doing, though, and it's funny because there's a guy I met one time. He said he had lost a friend, okay? And the setup is that the friend and him were hanging out behind a billiard hall like 1 in the morning. They got done playing pool or whatever. They're hanging out. He and the friend and his girlfriend were in the car behind him. He said a car passed him. Little did he know what was going to happen next was that his friend was going to be dead. But the car drove past him. He heard the girl scream, got up. He went out there and watched. He looked at his friend and saw his friend had got shot several times. And he was freaking out. He's calling 911 going, hey, yeah, I think he's dead. I'm not sure what to do. And he's freaking out. But down the road, no one asked him how he was doing, though. And I'm like, wait. Okay, so this all goes down, and then nobody asks you how you're doing. And it's the same thing with, first responders that see some crazy stuff. I think the wildest story I've heard so far was one guy said he saw a kid playing Russian roulette on Snapchat, and unfortunately, a young man lost the game, and he had to watch it he kept playing on repeat. And he's like, he looked pale in the face when he came by where I was at. And I was like, hey, man, are you okay? He goes, no, man. He goes, I just saw the crazy thing. And this guy has no color in his face. He's looking like he saw a ghost. He's like, I just had to watch a kid, play Russian roulette on a Snapchat. And he's like, you get to the point you watch the gun go off before the Snapchat ends, and I'm just like, oh no, dude, are you are you okay, man? Are you doing all right? He's like, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's a lot, and it leads to like it's those conversations that had I never asked him, I would have known. But that's wild though. These people didn't ask him, hey, how are you doing? So like that's my big thing that a lot of people take from me is I go, hey, how's your mental health? And people think it's funny when you ask that question because they look at you weird at first and they go, why are you asking? Because I'm curious, because I don't think people ask that question enough. Hey, like, how are you doing? Are you okay? Are you having a rough day? Is there something on your mind? Because a lot of times you can read people's body language and see that something's bothering them, and they just need you to ask them. It's like they don't want you to ask, but if you ask them, a lot of people are inclined usually just come and tell you. They'll start spewing things out. And where I work at a gas station all night, so I run into people all the time. And, I see a lot of first responders and all these other guys coming in. I always ask them how they're doing and things like that. Hey, you good? And if somebody looks like something bothering them, I'll just ask them. Like, I'll go up to them and just say, hey, listen, how are you? And that's how this podcast was spawned originally, was because there was a gentleman that was watching that was hung out in the store a lot of times, came in, did some work. And he's like, hey, does everyone ever tell you have this uncanny ability to just get people to trust you, to tell you things that normally they wouldn't tell anybody? I'm just like, no, I'm just me. It's like, yeah. And he said, I think that's what it is. The fact you come off so genuine when you ask a question to them because you actually care. You're just like, hey, listen, how are you doing? It's not like somebody asking you like a fake, how are you doing? It's hey, listen, how are you doing today? You doing good?
Yeah.
I've had some wild stories though. Some people told me, one guy told me he lost his kid. He just lost his kid 5 minutes prior to walking into the store. And I was like, dude, then what are you doing here, man? Like, are you good? He's like, you really want to know? And I'm like, yeah, man, what's up? You sound like something's wrong. Talk to me. What's up? And he told me that, and I was just like, whoa. So I think it's so interesting to hear people make the argument that it is, but I think now it is. Now we talk more about mental health now ever since starting the show. You see more shows popping up, which I love because more people are bringing their voice into the subject. And I feel like, that excuse everybody has, well, there's already a podcast like that there. But it's not your podcast. It's not your voice. It's not your conversation you're having with these people. You can sit there and drill 20 questions, or you could have a real conversation, get authentic answers from people, and especially with yours, when you're like giving these lectures to people and you're just telling them things, they're getting so triggered about things. It's like, why are you getting mad? All I'm doing is having a conversation with you. like you don't like what I'm saying. Okay, I get it, but I'm not calling you out particular. I'm just stating the facts for what it is.
Yeah, take it for what you will. But yeah, I think that it's so important that as we talk about first responder, law enforcement, military, is that every day is a different day. There's a lot of uncertainty and not knowing what it is that you're going to come up on for the next call or whatever it is. And so I think that it's not just one trauma, it's trauma after trauma after trauma and this cumulative effect. And I think it's so important that we also recognize that too, which is just a defining feature of this population.
Yeah, and that's crazy though, how many things they may see in a night too.
Oh,
and
yes.
It's just a constant attack on their mental health itself.
Yes.
I feel like now's the time we start demanding more for these guys, especially military too. There's a gentleman I did the first episode of this show he told us the story about how he was overseas and he was involved in combat. The Humvee flipped over like an action movie type thing. From what he was describing, he said he was out cold for 15 minutes, woke up, and he had to lie to everybody around him that he was okay because he was the commanding officer. So he's like, he's trying to keep strong for everybody. But here's the fucked up part, Dr. Leah. When he came back, he's like, he did a psych evaluation, knew that he wasn't feeling right, knew something was wrong, and they told him that he was okay. I was like, how are you going to tell this guy who just went through what he just went through, tell him he's okay, and he's telling you, hey, there's something not right. I don't feel right. I feel something's wrong. Like red flags here. There's something not going right. And you're telling him it's okay. But then he found out when he asked them, hey, did you look at my test results or did you look at the test before I went over? And he goes, they said, well, we looked at your test results before you went over. And I'm like, huh? I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. He goes, yeah. And he deals with, TMI.
Yeah.
And like, for him to go to the store and come back is so physically draining.
Mhm.
It's just like, it's
Yeah,
crazy
traumatic
because,
brain injury is no joke, and then,
oh no.
the consequences that come along with that too, especially mental health, and it can be very unpredictable and very, very difficult to treat too. Yeah, traumatic brain injury is no joke whatsoever.
Yeah, no, and it wasn't. You could see him. He was talking about it. He got real emotional, and it was just like, for me, it was my first experience with TMI. Because this is the first day of the show. I've done it. I've done a little research. I knew a little bit about it, but when I jumped into these conversations, I didn't know where these were going to go, and it's been interesting ever since we've hit click from the first episode. We've had a guy come on the air. He was talking about suicide ideation, and he was talking
Mhm.
about that morning he was thinking about killing himself, had the gun in hand and things like that. And I was just like, oh my God, I was freaking out mentally when he was talking about it. Because,
Yeah.
I hadn't had dealt with this situation yet. I knew this would come up in the conversation. It was more because I was like, oh my God, are we going to get canceled? Or somebody going to shut this show down because he's being honest about what his thought process is at this time? But later on, I learned that it was actually better for him to talk to us because, as the statistics tell you, men don't talk about suicide enough. I think it's like 80% now that don't talk and they actually commit suicide. And the numbers up there in the close to 600,000 every year and things like that. It's just scary. Like, these numbers are going up. We know these are problems, but we don't want to address the issues because, and then there's just this. I don't know if you've seen these trends and these videos going around where people are making fun of Men's Mental Health Month and they're saying, oh, well, it's a
Mm.
joke. And I'm like, no, no, no. This is like making those jokes about those subjects you shouldn't touch. And then, like, the one lady got
Yeah.
canceled. And it's just like, to me, it's like, I finally said something. I've been quiet up until this point, and I got mad. I posted this video and I was like, you know what? So respectfully, go yourselves, because you know what? It's not that we're trying to make it more important than other people. It's the fact that we don't talk about it as men enough, and that's the problem. I think that people are missing in these videos, or people are highlighting, is that we as men are programmed not to talk about these things,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So we're going to start a panel. We're hopefully next week is when we're doing it. But me and another guest that was on, we're going to start it. We're going to start that conversation, start pushing the conversation further,
Great.
and
Yeah.
things like that. But I think it's the same thing too. Is it goes the same as the first responders too, man. It's like, I don't feel like people ask them enough and talk to them enough, and they don't get enough help. And to me, it's
Mhm.
just like, we got to stop now, man, because there's too much that goes on with these things. Too many suicides that lead to death because of these guys' experiences. Same thing with military PTSD and things like that. It's a real thing. These people go through these real things, And
Yeah.
I think the American Sniper
Absolutely.
movie was a very interesting perspective when they were showing Kyle's thought process. He's like sitting there staring at the TV and he's visualizing these things. And the poor guy is going through it and no one else notices that he's going through it. And it's scary. And then, Kyle was just trying to help other people. Unfortunately, lost his life to the gentleman that, ended up going berserk at the shooting range because he said he wanted to, I forget what his exact words were, but he wanted to take out the king or something. And Kyle never wanted to be idolized like that. He's like, no, you don't want to, I don't want to be idolized like that at all, because it just, what he wasn't okay with it himself,
Mhm.
and it's just crazy, honestly, that, that these things have to happen for us to start having these conversations, instead of
Yeah.
us addressing these issues ahead of time. And now, now all of a sudden we want to, it's like, we know it's a problem. Now it becomes an issue that, oh, okay, well, now we're going to talk about it for a little bit this month. And then we stop talking about it. But it's like the conversation doesn't end there. Same thing with, what you do. It doesn't end after this
Yeah.
conversation. It continues to go on,
Absolutely.
and things like that too. So, but, I look forward to the book, honestly. I
Thank
think it's going to be
you.
great. October 1st.
And you said you're not a big reader. There will be an audiobook and it will be my voice. So if you prefer that,
Okay.
that's
All
an
right.
option for you.
I'll do, listen, I'll read it. I promise I'll read it. I do audiobooks too, though. It just depends what I'm doing. If I'm doing stuff, I'll have headphones in. I'm listening as I'm going around,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. I read a lot of books for the show for people that have books that they send them ahead of time for me, and I'll read them, usually scan over them, get some, information about the book so I know what we're talking about. Some
Yeah.
people even provided me little, hey, these are little notes that we want to hit on for the book and things like that. So I like reading now. I think it's interesting because everything I'm learning. I mean, I've got a breast cancer memoir, and I didn't know how to feel about it at first, but I was like, you know what? Let's give it a shot. It was the greatest thing I've ever read in my life.
Wonderful.
So, but yeah, I definitely will have to check out the book. Like I said, I got a couple other books I have to read too. I have other people that have sent me books I have to read. I got a lot of reading to do. So, I got to
Yeah,
work
you
my
better do
sleep
your
in there too, or
homework.
Dr. Leah's going to come back and get me for that.
I will.
Well, thank you so much for coming, Dr. Leah. It was so great having you here. I
My
think that what you're
pleasure.
doing is amazing. I think it's people like you that are making the change, and making these things more aware to people. And, sleep is an issue for a lot of people. I think a lot of people don't think about it because we all see all these people that, oh,
Yeah.
you always look tired. But do you ever wonder why they're tired? You know what I mean? We don't know what these people are dealing with. You know,
Right.
and like you said, they have bad sleep habits. They're leaving TVs on, or these things that we all think are working, but they're not working for all of us, you know, kind of things like
Mhm.
that. And I think the Sleep Advantage is going to be a great book. You know, if you have to cut some out, that just means, look, you have to write another book to fill the rest of that stuff in
Yes.
then.
Yes.
So, Doctor, go ahead and plug exactly where everybody can find you. Is the book going to be available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, stuff like that too?
Yes, it will be. So right now you can find me on drleahkaylor.com. And if you're interested in learning more about the book, there's an area where you can enter your email address and you can get information as we get closer to the book release. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on your regular social media, again, at
She's even on
drleahkaylor.com.
TikTok, guys.
I am trying. I'm trying my best to put some catchy sleep wisdom out there in like less than 20 seconds, which is
Just tag me in it. I'll
challenging.
shoot you what my handle is on there. I think I already followed you on there. And if you tag me,
Yes.
I'll post it, repost it for you, and put it on mine and post it on my page for people to see as well. And things like that.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'm big into supporting people. Dr. Leah is also on Instagram too. She doesn't tell you that, but she's on there as well. Post
I'm
some great videos
trying.
there too. And,
Yes.
and like I said there, if you tag me in those two, I'll definitely post them on my stories and things like that. I'm always all about trying to get that information out there for people and things like that. You know, and like I said, go check out the book October 1st. It comes out. It's gonna be an audio version, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, everywhere you get your books at, guys. Go check it
Yeah.
out. Right?
Thank you so much.
No,
Yes.
not a problem. Anyways, but Dr. Leah, like I said, I appreciate you coming. You know, do come back if you want to. Write another book. Another Sleep Advantage comes out. You got that second book, hit me up. We'll definitely get her back to come back and talk about that one too, guys. You know, I'm Pete vs. Anxiety. You know where to find me. I'm pretty much an X all the way down to TikTok. I'm on Spotify all the way down to Heart Radio. And as I always say, it costs nothing, absolutely nothing to be kind to somebody. One kind act you can do can save someone's life, or hell, you can even save their day. I'm Pete vs. Anxiety, saying, don't ask how your day is today. Say, hey, how's your mental health today?